I hear a parrot.
Let me close that door real quick.
Mr. French, hello. Yes.
Oh, that bird will wake you up 5:30 in the morning.
Baxter's guarding the parrot. So,
All right, very good.
All right.
Yeah.
I agree, Mark.
All right. All right, Joel, you want to get it started?
Yep, we can get started right now. I am recording,
Okay.
and imagine more people are going to come in as we go. So if, take it away.
All right, great. Well, folks, welcome to this evening's session. My name is Scott Schwartz. I'm the director of the University Sousa Archives and Center for American Music. Thank everyone for joining the session. Walking through Champaign-Urbana's music scene with Nick Rudd. We've got some wonderful panelists who will introduce themselves. I do want to highlight Joel Spencer at the Urbana Free Library, who is going to be playing several roles: DJ when needed, commentator when such needs arise. We also have Brian Robertson, also at the Urbana Library, kind of helping with the text. So if for those folks who, and of course here I have my damn phone going on, so let me turn that off. They'll be making sure the tech works for us. And just for our audience, I'd like to let folks know if you could turn your videos off, that'll make it easier for the panelists to see each other. That'll be a big help. If you have questions, please use chat. That will be big help. Joel and I will be monitoring the chat, and please, use it as needed. We've also asked that if you can keep your microphones off until you have a question, that'll be big help to keep the background noise down. We're going to kind of kick off things with kind of self-introductions with everyone. And then we're going to go for about 90 minutes or even longer. Joel wanted me to remind everybody that while we will finish up at the 90 mark, the bottom line is we'll go much longer than that until 8 o'clock when we run out of time. So if we are ready to go. Jeff, I'd like you to kind of kick us off with an introduction on who you are and just briefly say something about your connections with the scene and Nick. And then you can pick one of the other Hollywood squares and we'll kind of run the circle. So Jeff, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Scott. God, it's so great to see everybody on the screen. I'll probably start crying before this thing's over with, but anyway, so I'm Jeff Evans, and my connection with Nick goes back to probably 1977, 76, 77, and I was not managing, but I was working in Team Electronics in the record department, and Nick and Eric Davis, another friend of ours, used to come in a lot, Max and different people, and buy music and talk music. And that's kind of how I got to know Nick. And my memory is really challenged a lot of times, but we became good friends because of the music we bonded over. And we started playing together. I'm guessing probably around 77 at some point. And that was with Bernie Proschel and David Ward, I believe. And we might have been playing some before that with just jamming in the Polar Ice House rehearsal room. And, and fast forward, so I don't talk too long. We formed a band called Maud Lang. We called it Maud Lang because we love Big Star and the Big Star song. And Nick was writing some great tunes. And then I met Steve Scariano at a Kinks concert in St. Louis. And we became friends. And I don't know exactly how. Steve will probably have to remind me of all this, but at some point we were looking for a new bass player, and I asked Steve if he wanted to play with us, or I don't know if I did or Nick did, whatever. But we started playing together, and that was Bee Lovers. So that's when Bee Lovers came about, and Bee Lovers played until, was it 83? And I was the drummer for them, drummer with Nick. And I didn't even say I'm a drummer, did I? So I was drummer. And then I was out of the band for a period. And when they recorded the Soul Light Season EP, and then I came back in the band. So actually that may have been 83, and played with Turning Curious until they disbanded, until Turning Curious disbanded. And then I was playing with my wonderful friend Mark Rubel and Captain Rat and the Blind Rivets, and had a period, I think it was around 1993, where Nick Rudd's Blown. So Steve and myself and Nick playing a power trio. And then fast forward several years, and Jan's Project was formed. So Jan's Project, initial idea from Nick was to go back and record some of the songs, because Nick wrote so many songs, and to go back and record some of the songs that we had heard that he had listened to from a Mabel's tape a long time ago, and that was going to be with Adam and Steve and myself. And that turned into several years of playing as the Jan's Project with Steve Lindstrom and Todd Fletcher. And it was so, I miss it so much. I'm gonna stop there. Thanks.
Steve Scariano, you want to just give us a little bit?
Well, it wasn't just a Kinks concert. It was a Kinks and Blondie concert that I met Jeff at very serendipitously in 1977. Jeff and I played in a couple of bands. It didn't work out in 78 and 79. I met Nick through Jeff, I think in 79. And in 1980, I was sitting around in St. Louis doing nothing. Couldn't find people to play with and make the kind of music I wanted to make at that point in time, which would have been music like the DBs, Chris Stamey and things like that. And I got a call from my old friend Jeff out of the blue and said, "Hey, been playing with Nick and Bernie, and we need a new bass player." And Jeff sent me a tape, and there was some original songs that Nick had written. And I'm like, okay, I'll come up for this. And we played. And it was kind of instant that I call it the monkeys at the beach house thing, where all bands don't have that, but there's this thing that happens where you have this instant chemistry, and it's the Marx Brothers, and you're all in love with each other. And everybody, it's very infectious to the people around you. And we had that right from the get-go. in the Bee Lovers. Bee Lovers lasted until 85. I got a call from Nick, I think it was 91, wanting me to, he's like, I want you, Jeff's playing with me and we make this, the three of us make this sound together and I want that sound again. And so he asked me to join his band Blown. We did that for a few years. And then in 2009, Nick and I had been, Nick sent me a box of tapes, old tapes, of Bee Lover stuff. And I had some of it digitized. And we were both amazed at how well the songs had held up. And we had never gotten to record them properly back in the day. So Jan's project started out as this recording project. And of course, I think it was the first time we got together and played, maybe it was the second time, Nick said those magic words that he always said, I got a new one if you want to work it up. And of course it was great. It was a great song and we worked it up and it was no longer just a recording project. Here we go again. We've got another band going. And the Jan's project went from 2009 to 2017.
Wow.
I'm going to throw it to my friend Adam Schmidt.
Am I on mute? Unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can, Adam.
Well, I met Nick probably formally in, I want to say 1984. But I think I'd heard Nick's music and the music of the Bee Lovers at least 2 or 3 years prior to that. And I'd probably met Nick at Record Service where he was working. So I guess counting up the years, it's probably been at least a decade or two. I don't know, what is that? 35 years at least that I've known Nick. And he's just been, he was a great friend. Respected him a lot for his music and his aesthetic in regard to creating music. And I also just loved him. And I'd be happy to speak more, but maybe I should throw it over to some other people. I'm thinking Mark Rubel might be a good person to throw it to, because Stabs in the Dark is something I'd really love it if Mark would make mention of, because I think that's a really integral part of my knowledge of Champaign history. I'll throw it to Mark.
And I met Adam. I worked with Adam's mother at the Illinois Champaign County Arts Council.
What's that?
That she had a son.
Oh, there's a Zoom thing. A friend of mine who's a local musician.
Her son was interested in music, and could I advise? And there I was advising somebody who was way more talented than I will ever be. But in 1980, some friends of mine and I started a sort of my name is Mark Rubel, obviously, and with some friends of mine, I started a post-hippie collective recording studio on
Robert
in Urbana by Carl Clinic, in a little tiny house that was about 20 feet from some very busy railroad tracks, and which is a terrible place to make a recording studio. And all my friends were electrical engineers and had jobs, and I had a weird liberal arts degree and didn't, so I got elected to be the engineer. And if everybody
So,
can mute her,
I'm gonna jump in for a second. Can we hold for a second?
please.
We had a setting go awry and had locked people getting in. We found that and fixed it, but in the meantime, everybody that was waiting to get in is now flooding in, which is why I don't know if you all can hear the things that I am. So if we wait just a second, it's already slowing down, but I wanted to give it a second to get more people in.
Joel, thanks for the help on this. For those people who aren't the panelists, if I could ask you to kind of turn off your video, that'll help with the network speed just a bit. That'll, you need to send a question. Go ahead and use chat to send us questions. Okay, great.
Yeah, and thanks to Gina for sending that along. I was unaware until she chatted to let me know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I just did.
Beautiful. All right. Mark, do you want to pick someone else to kind of introduce themselves, and we can go from there?
Well, let me just speed this up and just
Please,
say
yes.
a few things. So I was lucky enough to get to work early on in I think that first year or two with the Bee Lovers, who were a great band, and it was obvious right at the start that they were, and what a great talent Nick is and was, and everybody in the band, and what a true band they were, and how much it felt like something that was classic and lasting, which it's turned out to be. And it was really a great experience getting to work with them. And Adam, we made Stabs in the Dark, which was a compilation record of Champaign-Urbana music at the time, which was so great. All those bands that I love so much, Vertebrats. And then later on, and Steve, you'd have to tell me what year, but somewhere in the 80s, we went to North Carolina, made a record with the great record producer and engineer Mitch Easter from Let's Active. Jeff held up a happy Easter card earlier, which was hilarious. We went to a Captain Rat gig at the Trestle Club in Strasburg, Illinois, with the whole band. They played pool while we made a bunch of raucous noise. And then we got in my Dodge Omni, which is a car about the size of a shopping cart with 5 guys and all the gear. And the entire way driving from Strasburg to North Carolina, people were flashing their lights at us because we had the car so overloaded that our headlights were pointing into the air. And everybody thought our brights were on the whole time. And so we drove down and made this record with Mitch, which is called Drive-In Studio. And it was literally in his mother's garage. So here we were, this rock and roll band making a rock and roll record. And then the door would open and it was Mitch's mother with milk and cookies for all of us. And what?
And pie.
And pie, of course.
Mark,
And
that was February 1984. Okay,
I knew that.
That's what I wanted to say.
I just wanted to check if you did. And there were some adorable dogs. And we did a recording where we put your bass rig on the back porch and pointed it into the woods, and then mic'd the woods, which was fun. That sounds like one of my contributions. And then on the way back, having made this wonderful record with this wonderful human, Mitch Easter, who at the time, I don't know, he was older than us, but
I want to walk away from here. Great, thank you so much, man.
Can everybody turn off their microphones, please?
Please.
Hello. I remember when we got there, Mitch Easter came around the corner. I thought, oh, this must be Mitch Easter's 14-year-old brother. He was astonishingly youthful. And I also recall that we didn't have a name for the project, or there was no name for the band after we'd made this record. And it was, we were driving back. It was like, this is it, we've got to find a name. And so it was decided to do it in the way that the Grateful Dead had gotten their name, where I think they opened up a Bible and randomly found the name Grateful Dead. So I was reading a book called The Crying of Lot 49 at the time, by Thomas Pynchon. And Nick opened it up and put his finger down, and it said, things then did not delay in turning curious. I think that was the beginning of it. And that was where the band name came from. And then, just periodically I've gotten to record with these wonderful people. And I've gotten to play with Jeff Evans, which is one of the great joys of my life since 1987. You'd think we'd be good by now. But, but we, and then I got to record with the Jans Project also, which was also a great delight before leaving the Champaign-Urbana music scene, which I still feel part of and which I treasure, to move to Nashville, which is where I am now. So this is like a game show. I get to pick people, huh? Is that it? Is that the idea?
That's right.
So let's talk to Brian Reedy and his Siamese cat.
I was looking for the unmute button. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, got it.
It's so nice to see everybody. The It's very disorienting, but it's joyful too. I'm sitting behind a couch from in front of a couch from 1974. I met Nick, the way I remember it, I met Nick at Record Service when I got a job there because I think I got the most wrong answers on their test. I put everything to, I don't know if it was Neil Young or, I'm not sure, but got to be with Nick. And we probably disturbed people with the music we played in the morning. I miss Nick. We all miss Nick. And love to Gina and Towns. And but I was intimidated by Nick because, because he is very knowledgeable, and we were talking about playing for a long time, and we finally did. It was in Lynn Canfield's apartment, and I think we played with Lynn. It was years ago, and yeah, and then we started playing as Skin Donkey. I think Matt Allison was, and Chris, I forget, but anyway, we did that for a while, and Nick joined Lonely Trailer. He played bass for maybe 2.5 years with us. I got to meet all Nick's people that Nick was connected to, so got to meet all of you. I haven't seen everybody for a long time. Mark, ACAC. I was in ACAC. We played. We did a recording at your studio by the railroad, and it was. I liked it there. It was neat. This is a very incoherent history right now of this, but anyway, I left Record Service, and Nick stayed, and he kept doing projects. He was involved with, I think he wanted to know. He wanted to know things. He was very curious and wanted to know and did know, and chose different directions. And so we all got to be with him in different ways, musically and unmusically. And then what happened? We played together in Water Between Continents. I'll try to wrap this up. It was a 2-piece band. His melodic ability is so melodic, and but at the same time, the way he used dissonance, we were very connected to that. Okay, that's it. Wait, am I still on? I don't know. Oh, okay. Anyway, dissonance was very important, and so we explored a lot of dissonance together, and I really enjoyed. He's very transcendent, I think, and now totally transcended. So I will pass this on to Brian Robertson.
Okay, I have a question that somebody asked earlier, and this is for members of the Jan's Project. Is there a story behind the name Jan's Project? And then I'll pass it on to Todd, because I don't think Todd has spoken yet. Or if Todd doesn't know the answer to that, maybe Jeff or Steve do. Yeah.
I think I know the answer to that, and I believe it's because Adam was playing with them at first when they started, and I actually wanted to ask if you guys ever played shows with Adam or not, but you can answer that later. Did you just did recordings or? But yeah, I think A stands for Adam, and it came to stand for alternate, I think, after that, because we all got to like Adam and myself and Steve Lindstrom all got to hold that space that was originally held by Bernie. And I know that Steve and myself were both thrilled at that. Getting to play with these guys was like the fulfillment of a childhood dream for me. You know, like I first heard of them 1985 at Patrick Hawley's house, who excellent drummer who I played with, and who also played with Nick in the mid '90s in Blown. I'd go out to Patrick's house and we'd listen to that Turning Curious record, and we were both just in love with it. Something that I'm sure stuck with both of us, and with all the guitarists that got to, you know, enjoy that Spinal Tap slot. I mean, that was the only role that ever changed with those guys, was the second guitarist, and it was really an honor to hold that slot for a while. I played with them from 2014 to 2017 for maybe like 2.5 years, and it really was a joy. I admit I did sort of think of it as Turning Curious, even though they had dropped that name a long time before. But as I drove out there, I always thought to myself, I'm going to practice with Turning Curious, and it was always great fun and a great experience. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Cynthia.
My name is Cynthia Vocal, and I remember exactly when I met Nick. It was Halloween of 1981, and we somehow ended up at a party in Decatur where he was living in this wonderful, I don't know how we ended up there, whether it was Steve or Jeff. I don't even know how we knew you, Steve. But we ended up there, and I had never met Nick, and we walked in, and there was a pile of records in front of the stereo, and right in the front was Underwater Moonlight. And Ernie and I were kind of like, oh, we have found our people. And I just remember talking to him on the landing of the stairs of that beautiful house. And then, of course, then he moved to Champaign, and I ended up working at Record Service with him for years. I've written a little bit about, the music scene of that time and how much I adored Nick on my blog, Sandwich Live. He was my friend for almost 40 years, and I just utterly adored him. So let's see. Jason, you haven't talked, have you?
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everyone. It's so great to see everyone here and all the names popping up in the chat box. If you've got questions for any of us, please put them in there. I feel like the youngster of this group. I came to Champaign-Urbana in 2000 from New York, and I was seeking a sound that I didn't realize I was seeking. I was missing a sound, and I heard Water Between Continents, and I was spun around. That was a really great moment to encounter Brian Reedy and Nick Rudd, and really just try to figure out ways to engage with Water Between Continents, but that grew into a long relationship with Nick, musical relationship, starting in 2003 with a project that performed at the Iron Post that was in September that I called the Sudden Sound Ensemble, which I stole the name later and made a series out of that. But the Sudden Sound Ensemble was sort of like a pickup group project of mine to explore improvisation in Champaign-Urbana. And I'm a percussionist, and I wanted to play with Brian, 2 percussions and 2 guitars. So we had Brian and Nick and Tim McKeag. And it was interesting because Tim McKeag's name came up as one of the first people I met just in the early internet days of searching improvisation and Champaign-Urbana. That's what came up, one of Tim's projects. So it was really nice to bring together that quartet and explore some covers and some free music. It was nice to hear the story about Jan's project, because the next project that I had with Nick was called Ferrocene 3. And ferrocene is a rocket fuel. And FER is Finkelman, Eichner, and Rudd. So Ferrocene 3 was the trio. And we had some really beautiful concerts with that, including a planetarium concert before they turned all digital. So we were the last band, I think, to perform in like the, the laser light show and the smoke and everything and the slide projections. It was really fun. We had a lot of special guests for that. I'm just going to wrap up by saying that I was really honored to not only perform with Nick in June of 17 for his farewell concert when we reunited IO Mining Corps, which was the last project with Elizabeth Simpson and oh man, I'm spacing out. Uh, and I'll remember his name in a moment, but another guitarist. And anyway, so we played and Water Between Continents reunited, and we did 3 sets, 2 separately and 1 together. And then almost a year later, I got to play with Nick in LA at Sunspace Live with actually with somebody who came up in the same town as Nick, with boy, now I'm really spacing out. Percussionist uh, wow, Brad Dutz. Brad Dutz was on the gig with his wife Karu, and it was a really amazing collaboration because Nick just jumped on stage and like started accompanying Karu's song forms as if he'd been playing with her forever, and it was just a really beautiful collaboration. And that was the last performance in front of an audience that I did with Nick, which again was almost a year after his farewell concert here. So I'm going to end there, and I'm going to call Steve Lindstrom. I think Steve's one of the panelists, right?
I'm going to toss it to Paul Chastain, and then I think I go after that. Paul, you ready to go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name's Paul Chastain, and let's see. I had a little band in the early 80s called Nines, and we were around at the same time, trying to play at the clubs and stuff like the Be-Lover people were, and we went to see them often, me and my cohorts, and I think instantly realized that we were not cool at that point, because Be-Lovers are probably the coolest band I'd seen around town. It's just no question, when you walk in the room. And great songs and all that stuff. I was very impressed and inspired by the writing and the playing and everything, I guess. Anyways, so then a few years later, after my band had dissolved, I made a little record, a solo record called Halo, and Nick played on that with me. And then fast forward to about 87, I guess it was. And my buddy Rick Menk and I were in a band called The Big Maybe with Nick, playing Nick's songs, which were really fun to play. His songs like kind of made sense to my brain, but they weren't exactly a thing I would do, so it was really fun to do it. And also not be the singer was fun, just to play with him doing his thing. His guitaring is really unique and I think special. And so fast forward a lot of years later, 2004, my band Velvet Crush decided to do a record back in Champaign. We had started up in Providence, Rhode Island. We decided to come back to Champaign and do a record with Adam, Mr. Adam Schmidt down there. And so we also decided to get some local fellows to come and help us out and play. So we asked Nick if he'd play on a couple of songs, which he did, along with Mr. Bob Kimball. And 2 of those songs appear on the record, and they are some of my favorites. Some great guitar work by Mr. Rudd on that stuff. And that's after that, I sort of wasn't really in the scene too much. So it's really interesting to hear all the history and the stuff, fill in the missing bits in my history. And how it touched all of you guys and all these great musicians around town. Now, maybe throw it back to Mr. Lindstrom.
Yeah, hey, Paul. Thanks. Yeah, I guess I should assert my presence as I was a student, and I went to the University of Illinois ostensibly to get a degree and become a citizen of the world or whatever. Do something with myself. But music became the thing that was by far the most interesting to me, and were the band that made all the difference to me. I thought that, like, you know, they were doing the stuff that I had heard from around the world. The DB's first album, when it came out, that was a big deal. It was sort of like I think a shot heard around the world, certainly among the people in this panel, because it was different. It was like it was tighter, leaner. It was just like smart, you know, and you could tell that the B-Lovers had gotten that message, and several other sort of secret messages. And you know, as was my habit, you know, go to the show, drink beer, hang around, talk to the people. We all became really good friends, mostly due to the patience and generosity of the B-Lovers. But that started a friendship that lasted a long, long time. After I left school, Nick and I stayed in touch and talked, you know, we sent cassettes back and forth to each other. And that, you know, I went down to see a Water Between Continents show, which I testify about the power of that band. The first time I saw them, I went to, is it the Brass Rail? The really tiny little bar in the middle of Champaign. And there was like 7 farmers, like, you know, wearing DeKalb hats and stuff, like lined up drinking PBRs along the bar. And like this band unpacks, you know, and Nick and Brian start playing, and it's like, it's music that's jarring to me, you know, like I've got Brian Eno records and everything, you know, like I can take it, but even I'm sitting there going like, this, I've never seen anything quite like this, you know. And after about 20 minutes, all of those farmers are like, they're kind of going like, turning around and like watching these guys play their music. And ultimately, you know, they didn't stay for the whole thing and get autographs or anything, but you could see that they just got pulled in by this, like, you know, this really potent narrative. And I got to see Water Between Continents a few times. It's one of the most remarkable bands I've ever seen. And that, I guess, you know, that is something that I think distinguishes Nick from, you know, there's a lot of great musicians sitting here in this panel. I think all together represent just some of his range. And I think Nick was extraordinary, both as a great songwriter and lyricist, an unbelievably great guitar player. And he made, I think, sort of like maybe 3 or 4 different kinds of music, like great pop, great leader of a band, of an inventive pop band, you know, heartfelt, thoughtful, you know, smart, intellectual stuff, you know, a great acoustic guitar player, who really just pioneered his own style of acoustic guitar, solo acoustic guitar, instrumental stuff. It's sui generis, you know, like it sounds like him. It's his own thing. The Water Between Continents stuff is like it's sort of like, there's the free jazz improvisational side, which is just a whole different world that he was deadly serious about and really, really excelled at. You know, he could do that in a way that would, like I say, keep the interest of, like, you know, a bunch of farmers like at the Brass Rail or whatever. And he also, like, the other sort of secret side of him that a lot of the musicians here that like collaborated with him will know about is the 4-track guy, which is just this like incredible journal of like his songwriting that was just nonstop throughout like his time of making music. And it's different. It's very different than the other material. A lot of it, he plays all the instruments. It's more interiorized. It takes a lot more chances. It's wild. It's really funny in many cases, you know. So I wanted to throw that out as like kind of something to pull together, like the different you know, spectrums or whatever that are represented here. And I guess I want to use that as the, I guess I should cap off the story. Like I started as a fan holding a beer. I didn't know how to play guitar at all. Nick was the reason that I bought a guitar with my first paycheck from the job that I got coming out of school. And I was terrible forever, and I'm still pretty terrible now, but like I just wanted to like learn how to play and do it. And Nick inviting me to play with the Jams Project was like being elected the king of, you know, the world. It's the coolest thing ever. You know, a ridiculously nice Facebook story after 35 years to play like in a band with him. It's just ridiculous. You know, I could tear up like Jeff, you know, here, but that was really fun. But before I roll it back to everybody else, I want to, I guess I want to pull from the narrative I was talking about in terms of his development or whatever. How I want to ask other people to jump in with like the notion of like, how did you see his music change over the time that you knew him? I guess I got Paul Chastain in my screen. I'm going to throw it back to you, Paul, real quick, bounce back pass. Like, you know, you went and did your thing and then you brought him back like in the 90s or whatever, like, you know, how did your perception change?
I don't know, you know, Nick knew a lot of stuff. So it's hard to pin him down. Initially, you know, I was really, you know, trying to do pop songs, and I think he was too. But later on, when I worked with him, I wasn't working with him, you know, on his songs. It was more on my songs, right? So kind of switching, turning the tables there. And he ended up doing on those songs, doing some kind of a, you know, almost like television-ish stuff. And one of them is a little bit experimental, kind of, you know, we sort of just said, do whatever, and recording him in the Parasol warehouse studio of Adam there. And we just kind of let him go and do some stuff. And it was pretty wild. And I was really into it at the time because it wasn't like what I would have done. And it wasn't anything I could have sort of predicted that would happen. Like the songs wasn't like a television song and you're going to obviously play a Tom Verlaine or, you know, that kind of a solo on it. So I was a little surprised, but it was really cool. And it's something that I always hope happens when you invite guest musicians to play, is they do their thing and meld it into your thing. And it makes it really amazing and cool and fun as the writer, especially. So I don't know how it changed, because I was, you know, I have a gap in there where I was actually on the East Coast for like the whole, you know, 90s pretty much. So I don't know what kind of stuff he was doing in that time. I just know he had a voracious appetite for all kinds of music, and you know, you could tell he brought that when he would do something, when he would do a part. It was like, oh, okay, you know, this is this is not what I was thinking of, but this is really super awesome. So I don't know. I think he just was one of those guys who continues to grow and grow and grow, you know, with their musical knowledge and their thirst for it, you know, the whole time they're playing and working and writing. So yeah. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but that's
no, it's good. I guess I would open that question to anybody else who wants to jump in. Like, how did you see Nick change over time? Because I kind of think that's a real major part of his story.
Definitely. You know, Steve, I guess I just want to say that when I was listening to him in the 80s, he did things that, you know, you could listen to the record and you could figure it out and you could generalize something from it and you could maybe work up something else in that style or experiment with it. But playing with him in, you know, 2014 or 15 or whatever, he would record our rehearsals every week and send them out. And I would take a couple weeks and learn his solos, and they were fun to learn, and I could eventually learn to play them, but I couldn't generalize anything. You know, they were something that he had worked out so uniquely in his head that there wasn't really anything I could take from it other than the actual notes in the order that he had played them. Of course, he could play whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, but So I get, you know, that's how it changed for me. That's how I saw him change over the years. He was always very unique, but he became inimitable in terms of, you know, playing in his style. You could imitate a performance, but I wouldn't be able to imitate his style.
Does anybody else want to jump in? Thoughts on that?
Well, something that was really, this is sort of a more general comment, but something that was really special about Nick, there were a lot of special things, but he was so incredibly curious, just innately curious about the world, about what I thought about something, about what you thought about something, that he just kept teaching himself and educating himself. I mean, I think he was really driven to do that. I mean, in some ways, I think Nick was like a true intellectual, but I don't know that he would like that word, but he was so innately curious and intelligent that he just kept searching out more and more. And I think that's just led him down all these different paths. You know, I always knew him most through the, you know, the Bee Lovers and the Jan's Project kind of side of him. But man, I just thought the world of how his mind worked.
Yeah, I agree. You know, all these people, I was amazed when I got to be around them, even in those very early times, because we were all young. And, you know, being around, I mean, I guess the way I got into music really was through record service in Champaign, and just being there, and there would be some hippie that had a constellation of music in their head, you know, and there'd be this music playing that was like nothing I had ever heard. And being around these guys was amazing, because they're all sort of like walking encyclopedias of music. They're all really musicologists in their own right. And wow, did Nick have dimensions to him? You know, it's unusual really for people to be that good at that many things. And, you know, he was also a great reader, and I think he was always questing and expanding. But it was always amazing to be around them, because I was talking to Jeff the other day, and, you know, saying, you know, it's not everybody who carries all the catalog numbers for all the records and can tell you, you know, which label and which pressing and that sort of thing. You know, I've always thought that music is one of the finest things that human beings are capable of. And to be around anyone who is as good as all those guys are at making music is a joy and a treat. I mean, it's one of the best things that could happen to someone in life, I think.
One of the things that little changes over the years, I mean, Nick was always an incredible lyricist. Our hero, Peter Holsapple from the DBs, or one time we were at a gig and he's like, Nick is a poet. He's a poet. He's such a great poet. This is our hero saying this. And it was the type of lyrics where, okay, these are great lyrics, and you could tell one person can say, well, it's about this, or another person can say it's about that. And one thing that kind of changed when we were in the Jan's Project, like 35 years later, was Nick was bringing in these straight up overt political songs. And I remember a conversation we had back when we were in Blown in the 90s. This record from the MC5 had come out, and it had these great political songs on it. And me and Nick were like, oh, this record's so amazing. And Nick said, man, I wish I could write political songs like this. And I said, how do you know you can't? He's like, man, I've tried, you know, to write a good political song, the message has got to be tight and concise. And when I try and do it, it's really trite, so I don't even bother. Okay. 35 years later, we're in a Jan's Project, and he's got these great political songs. Hey is one of them. Hard Times in the USA is one of them.
Hall of Accidents is another
Hall of
one.
Accidents is one of them. And then after Trump gets elected, TTFD, tear the fascists down. I mean, how much more concise and precise can you get with that one? So it was great to see that evolution, where at the end, he, you know, all the songs weren't political, but he was coming in with these really great, hard-hitting overtly political song.
The Mansion Fire stuff, which was like 4-track stuff, was really, really great in that regard, in
Oh, yeah.
terms of the political stuff. I wanted to just like jump in with, I'm looking at the questions, and some people are asking about like what the scene was like in Champaign at the time, and like, how it showed up or whatever. And I was listening earlier to the tape that the one I always play, first when I'm thinking about Nick is the last show that Turning Curious did in 1985, September 30th, 1985. It's a great collection of like amazing songs. And I just started scribbling down some of the lyrics, from some of the songs. And I guess what I want to say about the scene is like in Champaign, there were a lot of great bands. I mean, Paul Chastain's band, The Nines, was great. The Farm Boys that Adam Schmidt was in was really great. I was a huge fan of the Rave, whatever version of them there was really great. Just some really, really talented people in many different ways. Nick, by the way, was a champion for anybody that was doing their own thing and doing something unique. My friend Fred Anderson, who owned the Pop Shop, who many people on this call know very well, he and I used to wonder, like, is Nick just trying to deflect attention from his own thing, by liking every band that seems to need help, and it's just because like that was the way he was, So I think that Nick was a major like factor in diversifying the kind of music that happened, and he created a sort of that air of acceptance and great diversity that came right after I left school. Like the number of bands and the number of different people, just like it just multiplied and multiplied, and I think he was a big part of that. I mean, he played it a lot, but the Beatlovers and Nick stuff was different. You would go to Mabel's. The basic idea was to go there and, have a good time and dance. The Vertebrats, like, were the kings of the sort of communal celebration. They had great songs. Like you felt like you were in a big garage or whatever. But like when, Nick took a while to get like where they, like the songs were so good, you couldn't not go on the dance floor, but the lyrics were always, they're challenging. There's stuff going down. And I think probably, Steve, you said earlier, like when you listen back to some of the tapes, you were surprised how well the songs held up. I think they do more than hold up. I think that like I listen back to those lyrics and those songs and they just keep getting better. And that's like that's a sign of like, when you're dealing with the real deal. But like, I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit, but I want to like throw out just a few lyrics from Some Things Never Change. These are just opening lines. He could only picture you in flowing robes. He could only picture you going down in flames. Some things never change. That, it got to the point where people would get on the dance floor, despite, lyrics that heavy and that intense, I'm going to come with a couple more. A to C. It's a long way back to where you have come from. From A to C, it's easy to be someone to look back on. And I also want to borrow a thing Todd mentioned to me. Nick was a great, great singer. An incredibly great singer. Like the freight of emotion and stuff in these songs, like carried in these lyrics, is just, it's immense. And like, as I go back, that's what strikes me more than anything. Like just how he could really, bring that stuff. Fire Escape, the first two like verses or whatever. End of the day, I started up again. Like that is an unbelievable like opening to End of the day, I started up again with nothing particular in mind. Well, I got no notions or telltale signs in the red hot blank neon light. You're standing there in the fire escape looking like you know it all. In a dirty old jacket, smoking cigarettes, your book is sticking out of your pocket don't knock it. Something you only dream. I mean, that's, I don't know. Hopefully some of you like remember these songs, you know, like one more, I don't know, two more. Desert Lagoon. I had a map taped to my leg. It was an ordinary day, sun shining. Under the western sky, rattlesnakes in the night came crawling. She had a face shaped like a lagoon and eyes like oily pools in the ocean. This is not everyday stuff. Pump House, I'm going to give you the full lyric, I think. And then when I'm done, I want to invite Adam on some of the song stuff and lyrics. Pump House, look in the sky, sidewinder blue, and I'll be a vapor. I'm surrounded by potatoes. I said hello, and I'll see you later. I can tell that you're thinking of me because you look just like some crow that's lost its head. I serve you one good purpose. I go to bed with you each night. You serve me one good purpose. You make it look as though I'm all right. Every one of those words is just absolutely killer. And I want to, like, I had a conversation with Adam a while back about the way Nick sort of like is sort of a poet of the Midwest that like nobody, you know, I don't know. I think Adam, you said it, the Midwest was for Nick the way that the desert was for Georgia O'Keeffe. I remember you saying that, and that really stuck with me. And Pump House and so many of these other songs seem to be about a place that we all know, you know, and like of this, you know, milieu. And I guess I just, if you have anything to add on that or want to jump in and say more, I'd love to hear more, Adam, if you're there.
Hey, Joel, well, Adam's.
There we go.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, well, there's maybe a story I could mention. I've told a couple of you on screen. When I found out that Nick had passed, the day that I found the news out, I talked with a lot of you that day, and then later that night, I was planning to have a little Nick Rudd listening session in honor of him and listen to some of his music. And I pulled out all the records and the tapes that I could find. And I sat down, and instead of actually listening, I was somehow prompted to just pull out a sheet of paper and a pen, and off the top of my head, I just started writing down titles of songs that I could remember of Nick's. And in almost no time at all, I had a list of about 60 to 70 songs. And I don't think there's any band, maybe the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, I don't know. I don't think there's any band that I could just name 60 or 70 of their songs off the top of my head. I'm sure I could do some sort of rote memory and try to think of their albums and what sequence the songs came in and try to jog my memory enough to remember their catalog. But I don't know, there's something about Nick's melodies, the way the chords worked with the melodies, and then, as Steve, you just mentioned, these wonderful lyrics, just expansive, picturesque, cinematic, deeply emotional lyrics. I don't know, it was just the complete package to me, Nick, as a songwriter. So I know that there was a bigger point that I was going to try to make other than my own personal experience, but I just always admired his work. I thought he had a knack to make something that was very simple take sort of a left turn, a sudden, just like a twist of the knife. You weren't expecting it. And I always admired that about his compositions, because that's a difficult thing to do. So I don't know, maybe I should turn it over to Steve or Todd or Brian.
There was a
don't know.
suggestion to play a song.
Yeah.
I
Joe?
guess Steve Scariano is like, did you make the playlist or?
Well, we've got Joel who's got a playlist. Joel, you want to play something?
That's a good one.
That was great stuff.
I want to throw out a few credits. The photo on the front of that album by Della Perone is one of the greats, one of many, many great photos. At least she also took the one that was in the program invite or whatever.
That's in Mark Rubel's old loft above Pogo
There you go.
studio. And that sitar solo on Mitch Easter's choral electric sitar was played by Mark Rubel, because Mark had to be on something on the record. So he said, here, do the sitar solo. And David Wisniewski's fabulous drumming on that record.
I was gonna mention Dave. Yeah. If he's online or anything, but yeah, he really did a number on that one.
What's another tune we'd like to hear?
Hey, Scott, before we get to another tune.
Yes.
I just wanted to address one other question that came up in the chat. Somebody named Brian asked about, most of the folks here really know Nick in regard to his pop music and rock music work, and wondered about his love of improvisation and how that, came about. Was that something that was new, or was that something he was always about? I would say probably as a listener, that was something that Nick was always interested in. I mean, he just, as folks mentioned, he was in and around record stores all his life, right? So he just knew so much music. And I think what really attracted me to what Brian and Nick were doing was sort of these really concise pieces of creative music that were obviously vehicles for improvisation, and even within those structures, they were highly improvised. And I think Brian is one of the people on this panel that could really speak about like this kind of long engagement with Nick in regard to, focused development of improvisational language and communication that the two of them had. And maybe in the pop music he played, that came about too. I know that people were really, astonished by his soloing, right? So that's all part of that process too. But I'm just so pleased to have been able to throw Nick into so many bizarre situations. I mean, I've always had this long curiosity about the field of improvisation and how musicians across the spectrum of the music come together and create some kind of meaningful experience together. And I know that, I had even forgotten until I went back to the tapes that Jack Wright and Ben Wright performed with Pharisine 3. And Jack Wright was called the Appleseed of American improvisation, right? So that was one amazing artist that we got to encounter in a performance at the Iron Post. I do recall that a mentor of my wife, performance artist and actress Lori Carlos, was here for residency at the University of Illinois. And somehow I was doing the music for this presentation, a theatrical presentation of hers when she was working with these students. And I had two different ensembles, and Nick was part of one of those, where it was all structured improvisation. And then two other things I want to share is that one of the things that I remember that Nick came back to me and was raving about, like years and years later, was this experience we both had improvising with a Tuvan throat singer named Sayan, who was visiting. And it was a noisy venue gig, and it wasn't really the atmosphere for collective improvisation. But I remember like looking back, upstage, and Nick was there and Sayan was next to me, and the two of them just had this thing going on. And Sayan was like this Tuvan cowboy. I mean, he was pulling instruments out of his boots. It was really, really nuts. And that was one of those special occasions. But I just want to, this is something else that Mark Rubel would have a fond memory of. But just recently, Mark Deutsch did a presentation for us as part of the Sun and Sound concert series at Krannert Art Museum. And it was a virtual program. It was actually the first program that was part of a series now that as part of the Nick Rudd music experience. Um, I would never really ever ask a musician to do this, but I thought I was close enough to Mark Deutsch, who plays a very unique instrument called the bazantar, which is an acoustic bass instrument with drone strings under the fingerboard and or sympathetic strings under the fingerboard and 4 drone strings on an extended bridge. And I asked him to listen to Water Between Continents music and just if he could just present one piece in response to that music. And not only did he do that, but he ended up, you know, really digging deep into the music and he made comment about how he could really feel the vibration of Nick and the way his approach to the music and felt a kinship to what Nick was doing as an artist, just like tapping into a insight of his personality. And I just want to end by saying that one of the comments that really rang home that Mark kept repeating was that, you know, Nick had this ability to make really complicated things sound look really easy or sound really easy. He was able to uh, approach music in a way that it was very complicated, but it looked very easy or had this other thing. So I just wanted to continue the conversation from there, but I also wanted to address Brian's comment about improvisation on this list in the chat. Thank you.
I want to say a couple things as the only female and non-musician performer here, except Gina, of course. You know, when I first met Nick and I was like 19 and he was 21 or something like that, and working at Record Service, going to Mabel's practically every night. And in hindsight, I could say I was a somewhat cute girl. And a lot of guys, you know, Ernie's laughing. I mean, you know, they just assumed you didn't know anything. They assumed I was there because I was Ernie's girlfriend. And like all the smart guys figured it out soon enough. But Nick I just always felt such respect from Nick from like day one. And that just stood out. Maybe, you know, it's a different era now. I don't know. But he was really special in that way. He was very good at being friends with women. And the other thing I wanted to say kind of about the scene in general at that time, I don't know if this is too off topic, but a friend of ours named David Olney, kind of legendary musician, and he passed away last year, but he played at our house a number of times. And something he wrote to us and said to us that he loved playing at our house because the audience and performer were working together as one. And maybe that's not surprising to you that are performers and musicians, but that really struck me. And I think about, you know, early 80s and it was the audience, there were great talented people and great bands, but the audience was there the audience was there and was thirsty. And I think it was the combination of those things that allowed great things to happen. So. Yeah.
I agree, and just to build on what Cynthia said, you know, it was easy for us who were in the middle of it, I think, to take for granted what a rare and magical place and time that was. You know, music scenes aren't like that everywhere. There's competitiveness, there's snootiness and that sort of thing, and it's really an earmark to me of Champaign-Urbana music that when you go to a show, to this day, much of the audience is composed of other musicians, right? And that, you know, part of what Nick helped foster is that a lot of the musicians were in each other's bands, and that, you know, you'll see the amazing musicians of Champaign, you know, you'll see somebody playing jazz in one venue one night, and then they're playing Irish music in the next venue the next night, and then they're in a rock band or a funk band. And it's easy, if that's where you grew up, to think that's how it is everywhere. That's not how it is everywhere. That's an amazing place. And, you know, not to state the obvious, but I'm really sorry to all of you who loved Nick, and I think we all did in our way. And I just want to say that, you know, to the extent that somebody is, as I said, a galaxy of music and carries all the ideas and everything that they have experienced and done with them, musicians are in a very lucky and position in that we can literally put what Jason talked about, vibrations. Those vibrations literally go out as music, and they literally resonate with other people. You know, we're listening to his music. We're all over the country right now, and that does not die. That's, you know, the music that everybody here has made will outlive all of us, and I think it's very beautiful in that way. So I just wanted to express that because of this ridiculous last year that we've had, we haven't been able to have a memorial, and I suppose this is one of them in a way. So I just wanted to send love to everybody here.
Joel, how about we play another of Nick's pieces?
Well, I'll show you my. So that was it.
Yeah, just clean up after yourself. Watch out.
Hey, Mark, you guys, would it be possible for me to say something from outside, just barely outside of the circle? Is that all right?
Go for it.
Go for it, Ricky.
So here's my experience in the music scene was Nick would show up at gigs and I'd never heard him play. I didn't know much about him. He was one of the most easy guys to be around, the most complimentary. He always had something positive to say. I never saw him in a bad mood. And then I go and I had a night off for a change. I wasn't doing a gig. And I saw, well, he's going to be over at Mike and Molly's with Brian. I'd never heard him play. So I thought, I'm going to go check this out. And just like Jason, or I think it was, no, Steve was saying, I went in there, but it was a much more mature crowd, or a more hip crowd than Brass Rail. And these guys started playing this improvisation. And the first thing that went through my mind was, wow, this is over everybody's head. Everybody there. No way. And they sat there drinking and all, but I looked at Brian and Nick, and that was a different universe. It was impressive. It knocked me out, and it wasn't anything I was ready for. I thought it was going to be slick, polished, and what it came off was super slick. Don't worry about the polish because it all fit together because they were just working off each other. In a way, I was envious, and in a way, I wanted to get up and yell at everybody, check this shit out. You know, it was so cool. So that was my experience with Nick. Was always the social guy. I just knew him because he'd show up, have great conversations, and then I go see that, and I'm like, okay, that I had no idea. So that's my 2 cents on Nick. And he was I always just really appreciated running into him because it was always like one of the easiest people to stand next to and have a conversation with. So there's my 2 cents.
I just want to jump in with something Paul Buden, who's in listening. Hi, Paul. Had said to me about Water Between Continents. He said it's like watching two great artists create a painting together on the same canvas. I think that was really what it was like. You know, it's like kind of like almost frightening to watch, you know, but it's really something else to behold.
I don't know if Brian wants to jump in and say anything about that session that we just watched, but Brian, you feel like you want to say anything about that session?
I'll try. Think that I'll try. Nick was hilarious. It was really funny, man. He cracked me up, you know, and I'm sure you felt this, Jason, and I'm sure everybody, I would like to think everybody probably felt this with Nick. There was a transcendence a lot of times spending time with Nick. It could be very transcendent. And I was lucky to feel comfortable with him. And I know he just seemed to reach out to everyone. That's what it seemed like to me. And he offered everything he had.
What do you remember about that session they just played?
But about that session, though, we were probably inebriated. And I think that it was just fun. I love playing with Nick, and everyone that played with Nick loved playing with Nick. We got to play with Nick, and it's such a gosh. I feel lucky. I feel lucky that when I look out, I recognize a lot of people that I'm looking out at. And we haven't seen each other, but we think probably about each other. I had a crazy dream last night, and it makes me think of the collective unconscious mind, which maybe that's why this is freaking me out. But walked into the room, there's Van Kegel. Van Kegel's there. And there's Tim McKeag. And there's Rick Shatnick, and he's 10 feet tall. He's 10 feet tall, and he was never 10 feet tall, and he's wearing a trench coat. And I was like, this cannot be one person. I do not remember you like this, Rick. Remember that Weird Summer, the Weird Summer album, the Homer, that Weird Summer album, Rick Shatnick. So that's the time in my dream, Rick Shatnick, but he's 10 feet tall. Anyway, I said, you're not usually 10 feet tall. And he was like, anyway, yeah. I just am really lucky to have played at all or have met Nick. And there was a time when it was possible to meet people and to not be weighed down by so much that you could be weighed down with, but I don't know. Seemed like lighter times. I don't know. We miss Nick. We all miss Nick, but actually, we're probably surrounded by Nick. Certainly feel surrounded by Nick. You know. And Nick will never. I don't know. To be honest with you, Nick he's always with me. So, I mean, that's it. I think about Nick, I'm with Nick. If I don't think about Nick, I'm still with Nick. It's like, that's it. But
pesky little fella.
yeah.
No.
It's so nice to have seen everyone in the square, which is gone. I can't see it now. I don't know if I ever press a button, and that's my fault because I'm not of the future. I am not of the future.
Look at you, you're on the internet.
Really?
We're seeing you, Brian, so that's good.
Did you see Margot? Margot. Anyway, Margot the cat. Anyway. Oh boy.
Well, Brian, thank you. Big love to you, brother. And I just want to say, yeah, and we're just so lucky to have all this video that was recorded in 2003 that was left with Brian Reedy. And Michael Mapes is the person who filmed that session, and he was putting together a show called Quick Spin in 2003. And it was a really interesting cross-section of local musicians that he invited, and comedians and other folks into his basement to record in front of the red velvet curtain. And I think it was thanks to Brian Reedy and Nick that I got invited to be part of that session as well. And there was a pilot that was made of Quick Spin, and it was just really super fantastic. And Brian and I just spent a big chunk of time last weekend, 2 weekends ago, to review some of this material together, which will be part of a project that Brian and I and Elizabeth Simpson and Tim McKeag will be doing as the first official Nick Rudd Music Experience event, which we hope to present on the Robert E. Brown Center for World Music YouTube page on the 15th of May. Waiting to the very last moment. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. And I'm going to put the link directly to that video. I know that there's a whole list of links that will be shared, but if anybody wants to just grab that. I also want to mention that while we were listening to that piece, I said to Brian, man, it's so great that he pulled out that quote from Rumble. And what's so great about that video is that when they nailed it on that video, Nick's got this beautiful smile, you know, that on his face at that moment. And I want you to, when you look at that video again, please pay attention to that moment on Nick's face, because it's like he's looking at Brian, he spins around towards the camera, and he's just so happy that they made that bridge. So anyway, thanks again.
Thank you, Jason. I should point out all of this was made possible through a Nick Rudd Music Fund through the Urbana Free Library. And there are two other important funds, the Nick Rudd Music Fund for the Center for the Performing Arts, C4A, and the Robert E. Brown Center for World Music. Those are all important funds to help support, to make music possible, and more importantly, to allow Nick's legacy to continue to live on for years to come. I think that's important. We are at our kind of unofficial witching hour, and maybe we should ask our audience who's still with us if there are questions they want to ask. We've been kind of bouncing questions and answers from them through chat, but are there other questions that our audience would like to ask, or if there is other music we would like to listen to kind of close out this session?
I have a question for Cynthia. Can you tell us about what turned out to be Nick's last public performance?
Yeah. I was
Opening
thinking
for
about
Will and
that.
Peter at your house?
Yeah. We announced that the Peter Hulsapple trio was going to play at our house concert series. And I got a text from Nick late at night saying, "Oh my God, you want an opener? I'm your man." And then he was like, "And I'm going to bring in Kenny and Jimmy and Todd Fletcher, and we're going to do all this." And the next morning he was like, "I'd had a little bit to drink. So, but I'll still open." I'll still open for you without the cavalcade of stars. And it was so wonderful. And I love Nick, but I was sure he was going to cancel. And we met him for a drink, I don't know, a week or so before the show. And he was like, "I almost called you to tell you I wasn't going to do it." And I was like, "I knew that, Nick. I totally knew you were going to do that." But he did play, and it was beautiful. There's something about watching somebody who is so good at what they do. And I know that sounds simplistic, but it was so beautiful. And I remember Peter Hulsapple he loved it. And it was magic. That song Raising Cain he did. And I told him afterwards, I'm like, "I love that song." And he did that little Nick laugh, he said, "I knew you would." And I'm so glad he was there. I'm honored that he played at our house.
We gonna play another song for Gina's request?
We are.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought we might be looking.
Yeah, Joel is finding it right now.
Okay.
So just give us
Joel's trying to
a
find it
little
now.
bit, a few technical issues here.
Yeah, no
That's
worries.
cool. Can I just say, and Towns is here too.
Yes, please.
Coming to the camera. Here we are.
Hello.
So I don't know why you can't see me.
Here he is. Oh, shoot. Okay.
There he is.
Hello.
I was telling Towns that I think he's the last person that Nick taught guitar to. So that's meaningful to me.
I guess I should say stuff too. He was my father, my stepfather, and that's pretty much how I knew him. I know you all have known him for years, knew him for his music or his friendship or however you knew him. But art is immortal, and being an artist and being able to share your art is a blessing. And it's amazing that he could do this for all of us and that we're here to honor him. And it means so much that affected all of you guys the way he did, because you all knew him so much longer than I did. So I had a short time to know him. It was amazing. It was so obvious to tell that he was an amazing person. And I'm glad that he got to know you guys and you guys all got to know him, because obviously, it's created so much love and good energy. And
Yeah.
thank you guys.
And I guess I don't know what to say. I mean, this is overwhelming. I knew it was going to be emotional. I didn't know how it was going to be emotional. One thing I know, especially as I've gotten older, is in our life, like our memories are collective. Like I have a certain amount of memory of Nick, but my memories are enhanced by all of you and the time that you had with Nick. And without you all, like I wouldn't have all of this knowledge and experience of Nick. So all of you matter. Every one of you matters so much. And the fact that you're here and sharing matters so much to me and to Dallas and to people who've never met Nick. I also just want to acknowledge that I appreciate Cynthia's story about Nick's last performance, because I love the whole of Nick, and that part of that was that enthusiasm about doing something, and then that fear of backing out. And I think we're selling a person short if we don't acknowledge that part of their humanity, part of their creativity, part of what makes them amazing is a lot of self-doubt. And as amazing as Nick was, he was amazing because he never took anything for granted. He never thought he was as good as he was. He never thought he was as smart as he was. He never thought he deserved as much as he did. And that's partly why he's not here. That's also why he was so incredible. And I think we need to acknowledge the whole of him. That was his life. And so we all loved him in our own ways. And I just want to acknowledge you all and thank you all for everyone who helped put this together, for everyone who was so kind to Towns and I in the past year, and for everyone who's continuing to honor Nick. So thank you.
Thank you, Gina, for everything that you're doing to help keep Nick's memory alive, and you've done so much, and we feel lucky as a library and as a community. It's been a trying time for everyone, and just us all being together and doing this is great. So, and I don't know about if everyone knows, one of the other things Gina did for us here at the library was she donated the entire Luwaka Bop collection on vinyl. So we now have that to live on as well, and talk about some amazing music. It's great, and a lot of people are enjoying that as well. So thank you, Gina, for that. I think Joel might be ready for a song.
That would be great.
Nope, he's just said maybe.
No, here we are. I need.
Oh, man.
He wants to know if anybody has a request. If you can see the list on the screen there he's sharing. So if he wants to scroll through, if somebody sees something they want to, no, okay, here we go. I think we've already seen the Bee Lovers.
With Gina, play something from Blown.
Torn
Something-
Between is one of my favorite songs of Nick's.
Okay.
What was it?
Can you say that
Torn
again?
Between.
Torn Between?
Torn Between.
There it is.
think we have a question from Toby. Yes? All right.
That sounded good.
Nick, the thing I love about Nick's writing is he could write as Steve said, it's a hit. He could write a pop song. You know, I am a pop fanatic, and that song to me is as good as when I hear Pinball Wizard and I get chills on my arms because of the hook with that song. I mean, Nick had so many songs like that, and that were part of his genius and I think also, you know, as far as with Steve and Nick and I, and who's played with us and Bernie and everybody, it's just, we would just look at each other and just say, holy shit, you know, this is great. And we would amaze ourselves. I mean, it was just, he would just come with these songs and was like, God, this is as good as the DBs or anybody, you know. And it was just so amazing to be able to play and with Nick. And you know, when we would play like more recently with the Jans projects, you know, there's just these certain times, certain moments at like a gig at off Broadway or even rehearsing in my basement where we just look at each other and just like, because Nick would play a solo and we knew it probably wouldn't be the same solo he played live, but it would just be like mind blowing, you know. We would just be like, holy crap, you know. And that happened all the time. And I've only played with what, 4 bands in my life maybe, and Nick has been through my life, you know, all along. And it's like anytime Nick wants to do something, okay, you know, it's like an automatic thing that I want to be part of what that is because of as Gina said, with our history with Steve and Nick and I, and how that is such a cohesive unit that could only be what it is by the years that we played together. So I just wanted to share that. It's just an amazing experience.
Yeah, Jeff, I always felt like Nick had a lot of songs that, you know, a lot of bands would just have one song like that, which they could, you know, dine out on for decades. And Nick had just tons of them that were just as good.
Yeah.
That particular song, I'm sure we all, like, at one time or another went to a fun fair during the summer, you know, where they roll up with the rides, you know, and there's the tilt-a-whirl in the Himalaya or whatever. A lot of my like early rock experiences that were peak were like, you know, whatever, like Montrose or REO Speedwagon, name a band, like with the, you know, while you're on the tilt-a-whirl. That song, Torn Between, sounds like you're on the tilt-a-whirl even when you're not on the tilt-a-whirl. It just gives me that feeling of being spun around, of total like joy and release. And I don't know, playing that song with those guys was one of the highlights of my entire life, but always will be.
Okay, I think we've got a video ready to go. Joel's getting it here. We're going to try to play part of the Blown video here, starting with the Forever song that's around the 153 mark. So Joel should have that ready here in a minute.
To a fist
beautiful to see the young Patrick Hawley kicking ass on that. Eric Bakes as well. That's you can't top that stuff.
Could we possibly, oops, wait. Could we possibly hear the last song he did at our house? I think I saw it on that list. Said at Cynthia and Ernie's last performance at Cynthia and Ernie's.
Joel is getting it up right now.
Yeah, thank you.
While I've got the microphone, I want to share one of the things that was special for me with Nick was just listening to music with him as well as playing music. Just sharing and talking music with him. You know, I didn't know him in the record service days, but Swap was how I met Nick. You know, before I even knew he was a musician, he was the guy at Record Swap who recommended tons of great music. And then there was a brief period of time where we lived together and we drank a lot of beer and listened to a lot of music at really late times of the night that just got us both through tough situations. And I'm gonna miss that with Nick, definitely. So.
All my life spent raising Cain. All my life spent raising Cain. There's no one left, no one to blame. Oh, all my life spent raising Cain. Fields are empty, to whom shall I turn? Fields are empty, to whom shall I turn? The ground's too wet to ever burn. All my fields are empty, to whom shall I turn? Fire on earth and in the sky. Fire on earth and in the sky. Sun and moon, bounty on high. Oh, there's fire on earth and in the sky. Love is here and then it's gone. Love is here and then it's gone. Day and night keep moving on. Oh, love is here and then it's gone. All my life spent raising Cain. All my life spent raising Cain. There's no one left, no one to blame. Oh, all my life spent raising Cain.
Well, folks, we're getting to the end of our session, and the one person we've not heard from is Joel, our DJ, and I think he would be appropriate to have Joel just say a few words about his experiences with Nick. Joel?
I'll try to keep this brief. So Todd Fletcher and I were joking about this in a practice session yesterday that Nick to me was just completely frightening when I first met him, because I was the, very interested in becoming a musician. And my sister was a musician in town and was playing in bands, and Nick was kind of in that echelon, and he knew everything, and he was just cooler than cool. And I was just afraid to talk to him at record stores, just because he was, you know, he was a bona fide rock star in our eyes. Much, you know, I did get to know him over the years at, you know, like Ricky Cummings was saying, like just at gigs and stuff. And he was always just the most gracious person, and was really easy to learn or to be around. But really, when I got to know Nick personally was many years later, when I had a job at the communications library when I was in graduate school. And I think that Nick had been gone, and then he was coming back, or he was transferring from a different place at the university system. And the woman I worked for at the communications library said, well, you guys will be working with this new person, so I want you to interview them. And so she gave us the names, and one of them was Nick Rudd. And I just went, just hire him, which was probably, you know, against protocol. So we did go through the, you know, he and I went into her office and sat down, and I was supposed to interview him. And thankfully, he got the job. And then I got to have Nick to myself for, you know, 8 or 9 months. And it was funny that it was such a contrast to the life that we had, the scene that we had been up to, you know, that we both lived in till then. It was, we were just very quiet with each other, and not because we were in a library, but, you know, we would go and sit out on the bench together and just talk about stuff and smoke cigarettes. And it was just a lovely thing. And I, you know, he'd come into the library once I started working here at Urbana, and he'd always check in, and he was still the coolest guy in town. That never changed. But I wasn't scared of him anymore. And I really miss him. I really do. This has been really hard, but I'm really glad that we've done it. And it was really, for me personally, it was great to see everybody here. Jeff, I haven't seen you in so long. I used to run into you all the time. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thanks, Joel. I just wanted to say
all the work you did on this.
I wanted to say one thing. Nick was a pain in the ass to play in a band with. Okay. And I would play in a band with him right now, again, in a heartbeat. So anybody here that knows Nick playing in a band with him can understand that. But he was a genius, and I miss him so much. And I would right now play with him again. No problems, no questions asked. It's just part of my life, man, you know.
Thank you.
I miss it all.
Yeah. That's the beauty of people. We are who we are. All of it.
Can I say something?
Sure thing, Mindy.
Everybody's been talking about the music of Nick Rudd, but for many years, I was on WEFT with a poetry show, and Nick would often come on, not only reading his own poetry, but he had such a passion for poetry and would introduce me to poets and poems I had never even thought of. And when I think of Nick, I can always see him showing me a poem and saying, this is gonna make you crazy. This is the most awesome poem. And he would really get excited about poetry. And I know, I mean, of course, Nick's the musician, but to me, he'll always be the poet, and he'll always bring a passion of poetry to me. Gina's nodding, she knows. He would always have a book of poems on him everywhere he went. So that's what I think of when I think of Nick.
100%. Actually, Nick and I first, we came together over poetry. That was how we initially bonded, was through sharing poetry. So I appreciate you, Mindy, and bringing that up. Thank you.
I love you, Gina.
Love you. Thank you.
Well, actually, the poem I see most is all of the beautiful people in front of me, bringing out the beauty of all of you in very special ways that are very personal. Maybe that's the memory and the legacy that we should all carry forward, is what he brought out of each of you and the community that continues to thrive, even though Nick is no longer with us. And I think maybe that's what we should remember most, is the beauty that he brought out of each of you over the years. I would like to thank everyone, Todd, Jeff, Steve, Paul, Jason, Mark, Adam, Cynthia, and Brian, for giving of your time to share your memories of Nick, and allowing to share what you found most enjoyable from him. I'd like to especially thank Gina and Towns for giving this opportunity to come together and talk about the music, the scene, and Nick. And most importantly, Joel and Brian, who have joined with me to bring this very special session together. Something that for some was too difficult to do. We've seen some people say that there should be others who should have been in this panel. And I confess that some requested that it was too emotional still for them, but I hope that they are watching. And I think all of us coming together to remember the music scene and Nick's influence on it over the years. His legacy will live on for as long as we're here, and I hope our children and grandchildren in the future. We are at the witching hour now. And I think maybe it's time for all of us to kind of catch our breath and hold on to the happy memories that brought us here this evening to talk. It has been an absolute pleasure working with all of you, and most importantly, an absolute joy to hear Nick's music. So with that, I think it's time to close our session down, but not to forget Nick, or the music, or the memories that each of you carry with you of those experiences. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Stay safe, folks.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.